Hello and welcome to the Best is Surrey podcast. My name's Paul Deach.
I'm Marisa Heath.
So, hi Marissa. Now, this week we're going to share our national and local issue. We're going to have one of each this week. What we're going to talk about on the national issue.
Prisons, I think, is an interesting one. I mean, obviously, there's a lot going on with the NHS. We can touch on that next week, but prisons, because I think this is something that is getting under the skin of quite a few people. I've had emails, I don't know if you have as well, more prisoners being released. And there was a picture this week of some prisoner outside with their Rolls Royce or their Bentley or something, thanking Keir Starmer. And basically looking like he's off to have the life of luxury as a result of his criminal activities. So I don't know about you, but I've had quite a lot of noise about it.
Yeah, I have. And, as an avid listener of other political podcasts and LBC and whatnot, that's all they're really talking about at the moment, as well as that police officer who, to my mind, was quite rightly acquitted of
Oh, this is the one that shot that criminal, that serious criminal, a drug dealer.
a serious criminal. Yeah, but anyway, that's another national issue. But we're not going to talk about that today. But that's all the prison stuff is all they're talking about at the moment in some of the stuff that I listen to, and I have to say that. Again, I'm gonna at least side with Labour in so much as our prison system doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. It doesn't work. I forget what the figure is, but the reoffending rates are astronomically high. I think 8 in 10, I think it was, or something like that, go on to reoffend. Most prisoners that are let out early on licence tend to get recalled for various transgressions, from very minor transgressions to serious transgressions of their licence. It's just not working. Now, I know people who have been in prison, and for some people it works. But I think that if you're the kind of person who, is genuinely remorseful for whatever it is that you've done, then I think it's going to work for you anyway. Whatever happens, because you just want to get out of there and get on with your life. But something needs to be done to reform prison.
Okay.
And in
Well,
Holland, and I talk about the Netherlands a lot lately because it's my favourite place in the world at the moment. But they seem to have grasped this nettle, and I just think that we need to look at it a lot differently.
okay. Well, I mean, I don't think there's blame per se in it. I think that the demographics have changed. And there's a perception that a lot of prisons are soft now, or they're almost training grounds to go out and do more criminal activity. Don't know if that's true because I haven't spent a lot of time in prisons. So I think we should probably dig into that. Perhaps we could, because we've got a couple of prisons in Surrey. Perhaps
We can go and visit them, no problem at all.
yeah, let's try and do that and actually have a conversation about what it's like being in prison, and maybe see if we've got a Surrey resident who's prepared to talk about coming out of prison and what needs to be improved. Because actually, there's a different set of cohorts, isn't there? There's the criminals who you will never change, and and criminals who do things that are unforgivable, where I'm like, look, throw the key away, basically.
Yeah, same
And then there's a cohort of people that might have got involved in blue collar or low-level burglary or something like that have done it because of a certain circumstance or foolish moment in their life, who actually need the chance to rehabilitate. And also those who've had difficult family circumstances and things where you've got to have a system to help them. But a really big topic. I think that probably Labour have rushed into this one, releasing the prisoners, and should have taken some time to have a look at models in the Netherlands and things. I know it's easier said than done just to throw up prisons. However, we did throw up the Nightingale Hospital during COVID. We managed to address things pretty fast when we wanted to.
We can when we want to. Where there's a will, there's a way. But I think that one of the things that we got to tackle is, if you're the person who has fallen into criminality for whatever reason, and there are lots of different reasons why people do that. But if you're in that world and you go into prison, which is meant to rehabilitate you, but you then come out of prison with nowhere to live and a couple of quid in your pocket, which is basically what they give you, and a bus pass to get to wherever it is that you've got to go to, you can see why people slip back into their old ways very easily. Because I think for a lot of them, and I know this might sound soft and people might call me naive and all the rest of it, but I think there are some who come out and slip back into their old ways out of necessity. out of survival, not because they want to. Don't get me wrong, there are career criminals who will just reoffend and don't care about anyone. But I think, there are some that come out of prison and are not given the tools that they need, to get them back on the straight and narrow. And that is something that we've got to address.
Yeah, it would be interesting, as I said, let's try and find someone who can tell us what they get when they leave prison or explain the situation. Because, I mean, there's articles in the Telegraph today about kind of saying a salary now with the sort of tax raises and things like that means you may as well be working a lot less than on benefits. The system is so skewed. And so what is the benefit system when you're leaving prison? What are you offered? What amount of money have you got to try and start again? Are you offered education for free? Training, all of those sorts of things. I'm sure there are programs. I know people who go into prisons to do teaching,
Yeah.
but let's try and understand it a bit more, because it's an issue that could carry on growing. And we've also got, unfortunately, an element of international people coming into the country committing crimes as well that's worth considering. It's all part of the illusion or perception, sorry, not illusion, the perception of a sort of broken Britain if we're not addressing this and getting the right way in. And there was a model, wasn't there, in New York, where they had a new mayor in, I forget his name, other people will know it, where he just went, yeah,
Rudy Giuliani.
did a no tolerance.
Zero
And
tolerance. Yeah.
cleared up on crime. So again, is the punishment enough? Are the courts serving out the right punishments? Are we dealing with crime in the way that we really should, to just deter people 100% from doing it again?
Yeah.
Big questions. But anyway, local issues. Locally, let's stay on the crime theme, because let's talk about the police. So Surrey have had another, I think, 395 police officers added to it in the last few years. So credit to Lisa Townsend, who's the Police and Crime Commissioner, and the previous government, actually, to be fair, in doing that. They were replacing police officers that had been cut across the country, but nonetheless, police numbers are up again. And I think there's an aim with the last government and this government to carry on trying to increase police numbers. One of the issues that people say to me often is, I don't see the police. And I'm sure there's a lot of different reasons for that. I'm sure they're dealing with cybercrime, child abuse, child grooming, domestic violence, all of these things that we know are going on. But Lisa Townsend has just gone out and said she wants to do the next plan, the police and crime plan for Surrey. And she's asking for residents to input into that so she can really listen and hear what they think it should look like. And I think it's a bit of an opportunity for those who do feel we don't see enough of the police, or feel they're not tackling some of the other crimes that are facing them on a daily basis, whether it's antisocial behaviour, graffiti, drug use, all of those sorts of things. It just might be a moment for everyone to get involved and try and really get resident-led police and crime plan out of this.
Yeah, and if I was gonna, so first of all, just to sort of address one of the things that you said there about, and it's something I hear all the time. Residents say to me all the time, "I'll never see the cops anymore on the street. You don't see beat cops or anything like that." And to a degree, there is an element of truth in that, because the policing model changed completely, not just in Surrey, actually nationally, where they went from a community policing model to a more responsive policing model, and they use I forget what they call it. Is it threat, harm, something like that? Words to that effect in order how they assess whether they respond to something or not. Okay. The other thing is of course, is that if your living room faces, or rather your kitchen window faces out onto your local main road, you're not going to be stood at the kitchen sink all day waiting to see when a cop car comes past. So there might be cops patrolling, but just because you don't see them doesn't mean to say it's not happening. Is the other comment I would say to that. But I think that there probably is a requirement, I think, to go back to a community policing model. How much that would cost and whether it's feasible or not, I've no idea. But that's certainly something I would feed back to Lisa Townsend, the Police and Crime Commissioner for Surrey. And, I would, make the comment that the low-level crime, which a lot of the stuff, let's face it, is that what you and I get to hear about, like the antisocial behaviour, all that sort of stuff. And I've dealt with a case of that very recently, actually, in my own county council division. And the reason why it escalated to quite a concerning level is because it had been left completely unchecked. Residents had reported it to the police. So it involved some local businesses as well. They reported it to the police, and nothing actually happened. So what happens is when you're a young mind, and don't get me wrong, Marissa, there was no one worse than me when I was a teenager. My poor mother, right, will tell you that the cops were constantly coming round to our house, telling her what I'd been up to. I was always in trouble at school and all the rest of it. But the thing is that if it's left unchecked, you become more bold,
Yeah.
right? And you think, oh, well, I can get away with this because no one's telling me
Mm.
the error of my ways, kind of thing, and there's no
Mm.
consequence whatsoever. And that's where that low level crime, that low level stuff in the community, the antisocial behavior, and even little things like littering and all that, it escalates out of control. And by then it's too late to do anything about it, or it's very difficult to address.
Yeah.
So that would be the comment I would make to Lisa Townsend, the Police and Crime Commissioner for Surrey, while she's formulating her new
Yeah.
police plan.
Well,
To remember that the small things, the low level stuff, actually address that can make a big difference.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's that deter. It's the thing I mentioned about the punishment as well for the crime being enough to deter it in the first place. If you stop it escalating and stop it growing in the early stages,
Yeah.
I think you've got more of a chance. And obviously, we don't get the insight Lisa gets into what crimes are going on in terms of drugs, child abuse, as I said, all
There's,
of these sorts of horrible things, which
there's
fortunately
some
we're not
very
seeing ourselves. But
there's some very serious stuff. I know this. I know this for a fact, right? There's some very serious stuff that goes on right on our doorsteps. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean to say it doesn't happen. But there's some horrific stuff that goes on. And as in our work as corporate parents at Surrey County Council, I think we spoke about this. Was it in the last podcast or the one
yeah,
before?
last week, yeah.
There are children under our care that don't have the love and support. In fact, completely the opposite. And that's why the state has to get involved in their care. But yeah, they're the comments I would make to Lisa Townsend, and make sure that this low level stuff is not forgotten about.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can put the link to the consultation for residents into our feed on this, and I would just say to all residents, just respond to it because it's worthwhile.
Engage with it.
Makes a difference.
I think she's running a series of events as well throughout the county where people can physically turn up and engage with her and senior police officers. I don't know if it's the chief constable, but certainly senior police officers. Do engage with this. This is really important stuff.
Okay, so we've got some guests coming on the future podcast, but today it's just you and I again. So I thought let's do something around the sort of feeling, the ethos in Surrey again, which we touched on last week. And this is one I was doing some research and having a look. I often do some research before the podcast just on what people are thinking and feeling about Surrey. And I came across a poll that said that one of the happiest areas was a place in Surrey in the country. Now, these polls are variable. So every so often a company, whether it's insurance or some company looking to sell something, does these polls to say where's the best place to live in the UK, where's the happiest place, where do people get the best quality of life, all of that. And I think that you have to take them with a slight pinch of salt because it depends on the question they ask as to the outcome they get. And they all choose their different questions. But it got me thinking about, are we happy in Surrey? And technically, when you think about it, we should be really happy because we live in a safe county. We've just spoken about policing and we know that there's low level issues going on, but generally Surrey rates as one of the safest places in the country to live. We live in a place with a lot of prosperity. Again, we know there's deprivation and issues going on, but broadly, there's a lot of wealth in a place where there's a lot of entrepreneurs and business people and people living out their dreams, doing well for themselves, living in nice houses with lots of nice countryside, with the best schools in the UK as well. We've got top rated schools. So technically we should all be sort of joyous and skipping round. But as I started to drill down on this, I found that that can be questionable. There are elements of questionability over that and different things happening that would perhaps lead us to have a conversation. So I thought to myself, let's start off with me asking a question, but I'm not going to give you the answer to it until the end of this podcast. What do
Right.
you think was rated as the happiest borough in Surrey? You've got 11 boroughs: Epsom Ewell, Dorking and Hawley, Surrey Heath, Spelthorne, Runnymede. It goes on. Which one do you think got the happiest rating? Just make a guess.
Well, it's funny because, the old saying is money doesn't buy you happiness. Um, to my mind, it certainly if I'm going to be unhappy, I might as well be unhappy comfortably, if you know what I mean. But using that kind of ethos, I would say probably somewhere like Elmbridge would be, up there, Walton-on-Thames round there, all
Yeah.
those really nice affluent areas. I spent quite a lot of time in that area campaigning in the past. I cycle through there regularly along the River Thames. And, generally people look pretty happy to me when you see them in their, in their 4x4s and sitting in their cafe culture coffee shops on the pavements in places like Weybridge and places like that. So yeah, I'll go with Elmbridge.
Okay. I'm not going to ask you what you think the most miserable one is,
Right.
because that means we'll be poorly picking somewhere out, for whatever reason. But I am going to tell you the answer to both of those points, where the happiest place is and where the most miserable place is,
Right.
according to the last directional poll, which was done nearly a year ago. So another one's due soon, but we'll come back to that. The question I would like to pose is Surrey a county in which it's easy to be happy? And that might sound like a really odd question to ask you, but considering what I've just said, do you think we should just be happy in Surrey because we've got all of this great stuff around us? Or is it more complex than that? Because I started thinking to myself, what leads to happiness? Is it that big house? Is it the new car on higher finance? Is it having an important job? Is it our health, our family, all of those sorts of things? Is it having places to go, those nice cafes you've just spoken to? I've just sat here this afternoon and thought I'd like to go out for a nice coffee. And I was like, there isn't really anywhere where I am today that I can do that in. And that made me feel a bit grumpy. So all of
Right.
those things make a difference. What
Yeah.
are your thoughts on that? Like, is it
Well,
where you live? Are you happy there? And what makes you happy about it?
I am very happy. I have to say I'm blessed. I have a beautiful wife who's intelligent, funny, and I love spending time with her. I have the same with my daughter. And although my house isn't very big and I don't drive, well, I don't even own a car. Actually, I was going to say I don't drive a flash car. I don't even own a car, but I do sometimes. And it's something I said to a member of my immediate family who struggles with their mental health.
Mhm.
I remember, saying to them once, sometimes you got to focus on what you've got rather than what you've not got. Right. And I know where I live, I've got the Basingstoke Canal, a stone throw away from where I am. I'm surrounded by beautiful countryside. And in the main, in every community, you've got your wrong uns, unfortunately. But in the main, the people in my community are wonderful people. And, I just love spending time with them. So, yeah, I'm happy. But, a bit like beauty, it's in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? And, when you look at uh, I know a lot of people who have a lot of money.
Mhm.
It doesn't necessarily mean to say that they're happy. In fact, their lives are complicated. They have mental health issues. There's forever turmoil in their lives and stress and drama. Um, and the money doesn't solve that. Money doesn't fix mental health problems. So yeah, I think that in the main, the people that I know in the community, and I am, pretty plugged into this community. I know a lot of people that in the main they seem to be happy, but there are a lot of people as well who are not happy, and it's not just because of money. Money is not. It's not social economic uh, reasons why they're unhappy for the most part.
But I wondered, I mean, there are some humongous houses in Surrey. You go round places like Dorking and Virginia Water and things, and people are living in houses that are just mind-boggling for the normal person. Not only that, I feel that we've all become quite territorial in Surrey because land is so expensive. We're all very precious about our bit of land now. I've seen a lot of breakdown between neighbours. I've often been pulled in as a counsellor to issues of people arguing with each other on streets and things like
A
that.
lot of
He's
that, yeah.
parking here, he's intervening on this, his dustbin's slightly encroaching on my area, or they're doing this extension and it's going to ruin my quality of life, all of this kind of thing. I think that we've all had to, not all of us, but a large amount of us have really had to find the money and blood and sweat basically to be able to live here, because it is an expensive county and property is dear, and we're all sort of paying, a lot of people paying for their children to go to independent school and doing that even though they're not hugely rich because it's something they've chosen to do or whatever. So there feels like there might be a sort of thread of kind of anxiousness about protecting what they've got, which in other areas where it's a lot cheaper, and there's a lot more space, that's not so much the case. I don't know if you've seen any of it in your area at all, but I've seen a bit of it in mine.
Oh yeah, definitely. Depending on where you live. So where I live, it is very densely populated. Houses are very close together. So you hear conversation, literally can hear the conversations of your next door neighbours, and if they have their TV on a bit loud, or so yeah,
Yeah.
your sort of local environment, because we all live so closely packed together,
Mm,
that does cause a lot of unhappiness actually.
mm.
And like you, I get complaints about noise, so noisy neighbours, and again, antisocial behaviour, a different kind of antisocial behaviour to the one that I mentioned earlier. But if you live in a house where your neighbour, let's say, is constantly playing loud music till very late,
So annoying. Yeah.
yeah, and you've got to get up for work the next day, you can understand why that grates on people's nerves, and especially if it's on a regular basis,
Mhm.
you can see how that can easily make somebody very unhappy.
Yeah. Oh, undoubtedly. I mean, Egham on Enfield Green's obviously got Royal Holloway University in it, and the angst there. You've got the vibrancy of these students, these young people who come and lift the community and create economic prosperity. They're learning, they're the future, and most of them are delight. But then you get residents who are living to those that are noisy or leaving their rubbish just piled up in their garden, looks awful, having parties and things. And those people's quality of life is completely destroyed by that. They become furious, so angry and bitter about the situation because they feel like their home's been ruined.
Well, absolutely, you raise an interesting point. So today I've been in St Michael's ward of
Mhm.
Camberley, which
Oh,
is
right, yeah.
the Camberley West Division. Because I'm helping a colleague of ours who's unwell at the moment, so I'm looking after all his casework. And today I was shown around the that community by the county council's community link officer. And it was interesting because what you just mentioned there. So somebody who keeps their garden full of rubbish and all the rest of it makes just completely brings the whole area down,
Yeah.
and depresses their neighbours and so on. And I think that, so I come from the north of England, as you can
Mm.
probably tell from my accent, and in the north people are far more extrovert than they are in the south for some reason.
Yeah, yes.
In the south, people are far more introverted, keep themselves to themselves. It's not uncommon for me when I'm doing casework, and if it's about a noisy neighbour or whatever, for the resident who's complaining to say, well, I've lived here for 3 years and never actually spoke to my neighbour.
Yeah.
That's quite common, but that doesn't happen in the north. Everyone knows everybody, and if there's a problem, they tend to sort it out amongst themselves, in a friendly, constructive way. Where in the south, people don't tend to do that as much. And I think probably the reason for that is that in the north, people tend to stay and work in much more, tend to spend live in the communities where they grew up, and they work in those communities. There's a lot more moving around in the south of England, I think, and people don't often get a chance to know the people in their communities because either they move on or you move on or whatever the case may be. And I think that there is a one way that we could probably address this kind of unhappiness about various things is to open up communication within the community. That's something I've tried to do in my county council division in Mitchett, Frimley Green and Deach, with my social media, with WhatsApp groups and all that sort of stuff. And to a degree, it does help.
Definitely.
And I think that might be something that we could look at.
That is a really interesting perception because it's spot on the head, actually. It is true. The isolation issue, the people who say they're lonely, I think that is quite a problem. We've got an older demographic as well that's increasingly saying loneliness is an issue, and that leads to depression and not being happy. Those who work in the community groups and voluntary groups always tend to be the more upbeat people, don't they? They're the ones who are like, yay, let's do this, let's get it done. Usually slightly more extroverted. But we know that being happy is generally found in helping other people,
Yeah.
in doing something that's meaningful and purposeful and things like that. Those are the happiest people. As you say, not just about money, it's doing something that means something. So trying to find more ways of engaging people and giving them the confidence to come into that. Easier said than done, because a lot of people are time poor. And I think that's also one of the reasons that Surrey residents might not be as happy as they once were, because I don't know what's happened to time anymore. It feels like every day is just some sort of weird blur of trying to fit everything in. And then where do you find the time to go and volunteer or do something lovely, or even walk on the countryside and enjoy your moment? It's really difficult. Surrey residents are busy. They're high earners generally out there, earning a living, taking
Long commutes. Yeah.
commuting,
Yeah.
sitting in traffic, as we mentioned last week,
Mm.
waiting to try and get to see their GP or whatever. All of these things are eating into our time. And I think that's one of the issues. We need to find time in Surrey to slow down and break down those barriers, those boundaries, don't we, more?
I completely agree, but the other thing is that, and speaking now as community leaders that we both are, that in the good old days, certainly even when I first lived in this community, I've been here since 2003. There was a lot more sort of community meetings about discussing various issues. I remember one particular meeting that I facilitated at our local community centre. It was that packed with people. They were literally hanging out the doors. Well over 400 people at this meeting. I mean, it was about a contentious local issue, but nonetheless, people were engaged. That tends to happen far less these days, and that's because that people are busier, like you've said, and you know we need to find other ways of engaging people, I think, and giving people an opportunity to feel they are part of the community.
Well, this goes back to the point. So a lot of the community groups and things are filled with the older population who've got a bit more time now. Do you know what do you think the most miserable age is? They've worked out the year that you're most miserable. See if you can give me the
Well,
age.
if my wife was answering that, she'd probably say 55, which is my age.
It's actually 47, I think. It's
Is
either
it right? Right.
48, because you're in the midst of everything then. You're still sort of on the hamster wheel,
Yeah.
grinding away, trying to get your career sort of where you wanted it
Get
to
your
be.
mortgage paid
Still
off.
paying your
Yeah.
mortgage, still
Yeah.
probably got kids who are either teenagers or demanding things from you. Your relationship with your partner might be in a tricky place at that point because of all of the pressure on you. Everyone feels miserable at that age mostly. So I think, you've got to deal with your mental health and happiness in your young cohort, absolutely. Your older cohorts seem more empowered to get involved in things, but we do need to keep an eye on loneliness. It's that middle band of people now that I think we've got most of a problem getting to. And it's how even politically we can't get to them. It's really hard to involve them and get them in, people yours and my age, 40s, 50s, even 30s, are not getting involved in local politics or as many of the community groups. I think that would be key to a happier Surrey. But just before, I just wanted to mention a couple of statistics. So
Yeah.
there's a thing called the Office for Health Improvement and Disparity, and that has 3 key indicators for well-being, and it's life satisfaction, general happiness, and anxiety. So we have done okay on the low life satisfaction, i.e. we're quite a fair bit lower than the national average. And we are okay on the happiness score in that we're about 6.8 compared to the national average of 9.2.
Right.
But for anxiety, we've got quite a lot of anxiety. So we are still lower than the 23.6% nationally, but we're on 22.5. So it's
Right.
that, there obviously are some anxiety issues in Surrey. But the interesting space where they looked at was depression and mental health, and prevalence of depression has risen rapidly over the last 5 years. So if you look at England, you've gone from 7.3 to 12.3% of the population dealing with mental health and depression. And in Surrey and the southeast, sorry, let's start with the southeast, it's been 7.3 to 13%, so an increase of 5.7, which is bigger than the average, than the national average, which was 5%. And in Surrey, the prevalence has risen from 6.2 to 11.2, which is just about 4.9%. So anxiety, sorry, not anxiety, depression and mental health issues have certainly gone up. We already know that. The lowest level of depression is in Elmbridge. I'm not saying it's the happiest place. I'm not giving the answer to that in the end, but it is the lowest, and the highest place with depression is Waverley.
Interesting, Waverley.
Mm.
Now, Waverley is there's a ginormous element of rural. I mean, that's where Farnham is. I mean, it's a beautiful place, market town. Yeah, that's surprising.
Yeah, well, like you say, if you're isolated, maybe. I mean, I dream of isolation. God, I'd
Me
love
too.
to be for a few days.
Mm,
Peace and quiet. It's half term at the moment, so I'm not getting any of it. But isolation is one of the key causes of depression, feeling lonely, not having anyone to talk to and express your feelings. So perhaps that's got something to do with it.
mm.
I looked at some average data, 3-year average data, and Surrey has the lowest rate of suicide amongst its population. But the rate of suicide that we have got is 3 times higher in males than females, although there is now starting to be a creep, an increase in female suicides as well. So that's starting to creep up in the wrong direction. And the highest rate of suicides was in Epsom and Ewell.
Right.
Spelthorne has the lowest rate.
Mm.
So it's just interesting because it's not as simple as just sort of saying, basically, Spelthorne is an area that has quite high levels of deprivation. It's got Heathrow, so air quality, and air quality is linked to depression and ill health.
Oh, absolutely. That pollution
Yeah.
surely has an effect on people.
Well, this is what you'd say. And you'd also add in that, Spelthorne has a lot of people who've dealt with gravel extraction, a lot of road traffic, all of these sorts of things going on there, which you'd say, well, would that not be an area where people are struggling more with mental health and things? But it's not. Epsom and Ewell, on the other hand, is very beautiful, a lot of green areas, big houses, no airport on it. Gatwick's not that far away, but it's not so close as Heathrow is to Spelthorne. So it's not as simple as you'd first think. I think there might be something to be said for drilling down into family and how much support people have got around them, basically. Spelthorne, I can't judge Spelthorne, but I do know a few families who live there, and it seems quite tight-knit as a community. Everyone's kind of connected. It might be similar in Surrey Heath.
Yeah,
People are
absolutely.
kind of keeping an eye on each other a bit more.
Yeah.
So, although I say that, the data did later say that Spelthorne had a high level of anxiety.
Ah, mm. Interesting.
And
But
women are more anxious than men. You might not find that strange. I don't
no,
know, but they are.
no, that's my experience in life, I would say. Um, okay, so let's tell to the big reveal.
So the big reveal is that the happiest place in Surrey from the data 2023, and this is National Statistics Office for National Statistics, was Surrey Heath scored highest for happiness. So with
Sorry,
a
Heath.
7.89, yeah.
Well, I did say I was happy earlier, didn't I? Well,
Woking boasts high life satisfaction, so everyone's quite satisfied in Woking. They've got an excellent train service. What do they want? They can zip
they're
into.
quite Blimey, hell, I mean, I'd love to know the methodology of this survey because, like, if you listen to anyone who we know in politics in Woking, you would
Yeah.
think like the world had come to an end. Although I have to say, I tried to sit through one of their council meetings recently and what wanted to do.
Yeah,
I have to say.
that would ruin your life satisfaction.
It,
You're thinking what the hell am I doing? Yeah.
it certainly did, but yeah, that's surprising.
So it could be because Woking has a high level of ethnic minority families there who tend to be quite close knit. Their religion's important to them. They stay living together. Perhaps that's what gives them the life satisfaction, that they feel they've got support all around them. It could be something it would be interesting to drill into this. I'm just guessing here, but
The other thing in Woking, and I know there's a lot of unhappiness about the high-rise stuff that's been built there recently and all that, but from a placemaking point of view, I think they've actually done a good job of Woking. I
A
think,
lot of people have said that to me actually, and the way they've done those like living walls and created quite
yeah,
an aesthetic to the place. I don't mind Woking anymore. I go into Woking to do some
I,
shopping
I
often.
love it, and it's got some great cycle infrastructure. You're right on the Basingstoke Canal.
Yeah.
Some phenomenal independent shops and artisans, as I've said in a lot of my Surrey discoveries. You know, I regularly go to Market Walk there and love the street food stuff there and that. You know, so okay. I mean, I could live in Woking, no problem at all.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think in the whole of the UK, the Shetland Islands came out the happiest, which then kind of undermines my theory about being isolated and rural.
Yeah, yeah.
And somewhere called Adder in West Sussex,
All
ADUR,
right.
least
Yeah.
happy place
All
to
right.
be. So Mole Valley people had good feelings about life being worthwhile, so that stood up there. And actually, I'm afraid to say, the lowest place, Epsom, Mule, and Runnymede had no data, by the way, so count them out of this. But the
Right.
place at the bottom was, see if you can guess who hit the bottom? Elmbridge.
Wow. Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the pressure may be to have that brand new 4x4 and be living in the house and keeping up with the Chelsea set and things. Maybe it's exhausting and, you know,
Well, I would imagine it would be because I got to tell you, because of the cost of living and the mortgage rate increases and all the rest of it. I do know a lot of people who have bought houses. They're on very large mortgages anyway, but then all of a sudden, when the interest rates
yeah.
adjusted, all of a sudden they've got to find another £2,000 or £3,000 a month, and you know
It's true.
and if you've already got your kids in private school, you've already got two leased cars,
They,
and a
they
massive mortgage.
Yeah, they have said at the moment the earners on the kind of 100 grand and those sorts of places are being hammered by the government. So you've had the independent staff who are already being taxed to death anyway. Those ones are being squeezed and they're about to be squeezed even more. So the pressure on them to keep up with that. I've just had my energy bill, my electricity bill. We're not even in the winter yet, and my electricity bill has literally blown my head. I'm like, I'm shouting at everyone now to turn off lights and not move in this house because it's just I've had such a high bill and we haven't even got into the proper time yet. So you imagine heating some massive house over this winter with all of those bills having gone up. That is pressure.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I always remember one of my close family members, let's say, I won't say exactly who, um, who's been very successful, but used to say to me, so now that family member is retired and they live a very comfortable life and all the rest of it. But when that person was in their sort of, heyday of their working career,
Mhm.
said to me regularly, the more money I earn, the less I seem to have, and that's because
Sure.
the more money you earn, the more your lifestyle, the more nice clothes you buy, the bigger car you want to drive, the bigger the house, and all this stuff that goes with it, and all this keeping up with the Joneses and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, so you can understand how these people, you know,
I think
um,
so. Yeah, I think it's definitely a lot of pressure. I think Surrey
what
residents are under pressure broadly. As I said in the last podcast, we're the second biggest contributor to the Treasury because we're all busy making money and putting money into this country. And are we sort of feeling like we're getting back what we should be getting back? It's a lot of pressure on the bills. But
But
I,
that said, Marissa, I doubt very much the people who are struggling in our communities for whatever reason are going to have much sympathy with
they
them.
won't. They won't. Of course they won't. And that is an issue on itself as well. You know, we
Because you
know
got
that
to
with
live
the
by your means. You got
deprivation.
to you got to live by your means. So yeah,
No,
so
no,
I understand
it's
that.
a fair point. Before we just move on to our discovery of the week and close
Yeah,
this podcast, we're doing a lot at Surrey to help people with their utility bills and trying to think of ways that all of us, including those of us who live in our own house with a mortgage or whatever, can reduce our bills. So I was thinking, Paul, it might be quite good to do a podcast setting out exactly what that offer is to people uh,
brilliant idea.
across the whole county and how you can get your house bills down. So we'll schedule that one in, but let's just finish finish by talking about Surrey discoveries. I'll go first and then I'll shut up and you can
All
end
right, go ahead.
podcast. So I have come across this shop, but I haven't bought anything from there yet because my Miss Opal probably doesn't need anything from there. But it's called Von Wolf Canine, and it's a little shop in Hawley. It's just been awarded. It was in the Telegraph, and it's been awarded a 3.1 million Ministry of Defence contract to provide equipment for the protection of military dogs. So basically, it's a shop that's selling protective vests and military grade boots and eye goggles and everything for dogs. Seriously
Right,
high level, because dogs do amazing things for our military, our emergency
do.
prisons, everything. But actually somebody told me that they bought a protective vest for their small dog because there's been some attacks on dogs by bigger dogs, particularly XL bully type dogs, that have grabbed a small dog by the stomach or, you know, whatever, and they can kill them. So this little shop has just done tremendously well. I think it's always had contracts with the MOD, but this is an excellent contract. I wanted to give it a shout out. I don't suspect
Brilliant.
that many people on this podcast are going to race out and buy armor for their dogs as a
Well, you
result.
might be surprised.
But
Um,
well, you might be surprised, but I just felt quite proud that it was a Surrey business doing this, and go and have a Google because they've got some really fun pictures of dogs in goggles and boots.
Well, it's funny you should mention it because, you know, I one of my sort of guilty pleasures is to sort of go through the video reels on whether it's Instagram, Facebook, whatever. And I remember seeing one a couple of days ago where it was this special forces, there's an American thing, special forces guy dives out of a plane with a dog strapped to his chest, and the dog had some kind of utility jacket on and the goggles and
Yeah,
and all the and these
I probably got them from this company.
boots.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got them from this company. And dogs have their own parachute sets, I read on the article as well. They can parachute.
Wow. So there you go. Brilliant. Oh, well, I look forward to seeing Miss Opal in a bulletproof vest sometime soon. Hilarious. Right. So I suppose I ought to do mine then.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to change what I originally was going to do as my Surrey discovery. I'll save that for next week, and change it because I mentioned earlier that today I was in St Michael's Ward, looking at various issues in the area on behalf of Councillor David Lewis, and the community link officer Mia said, "Oh, I've promised the Surrey Adult Learning Centre that I'll bring you in to say hi." Right. So we had a walk over there. I didn't even know Surrey Adult Learning Centre existed, to be
All
honest.
right. Yeah.
I had no idea, to my shame. And it's a Surrey County Council service as well, I wouldn't mind. But I had no idea that we had that in Surrey Heath. It's in Camberley. And I met Vanessa, who is the sort of lead officer there at the Learning Centre. And it's the most fantastic place, apart from the fact that the main building is this amazing grand old building.
Mm.
But it's what goes on there. And she gave me this catalogue.
Okay.
So if you're if you're listening to the audio only version of this, you won't be able to see this. But it's a thick catalogue of all the stuff that they do there, and I'll just read out some of the stuff, because this is available. All these courses, any adult in Surrey can participate in this. Some are free, some courses are free, others you pay for.
Yeah. This isn't too far from the town centre, is it? It's
Yeah,
not a
it's very
million.
close to the town
Yeah,
centre.
I did a creative writing course there like years
That's
and
it. Well, that's one
yeah.
of the things you can do there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So under arts and crafts, which is the first section, there's about 10 sections on this catalogue. But in the first one, you can do in arts and crafts, you can do calligraphy, you can do clock repair and horology. I have no idea what horology is, but anyway, creative writing, drawing and painting, and there's dozens and dozens of other arts and craft type things that you can do there. Pottery, they've got their own kiln there, so you can do pottery and all the sort of spinning table things. If I don't know whether that's what you call them, but flower arranging, garden, glass fusing and stained glass, jewelry and silver work.
Well, I think this is interesting because my creative writing course came when I was going through something quite difficult in life, and actually it kind of helped me deal
Yeah.
with that. and get out of it. And it was really soft, like, I mean, in the fact that they were welcoming, they didn't demand anything from you, they just allowed you to go in and do
Be
what you needed
creative.
to do. And it links into exactly what we've just been talking about on this podcast about mental health, depression, happiness. I think
Yeah.
people finding the time to do something for themselves, whether it is floristry
Whatever.
or making jewelry or whatever, I think that's so important for our well-being.
And you know when you're there, you're going to be with like-minded people,
Yeah.
so there's no judgment. So if you're
No,
into
there's no
knitting,
judgment.
you know, so if you're a 55-year-old Mancunian, big strapping Mancunian, and you want to learn how to knit, there's no judgment, you know. So, but there's loads going on there. I mean, there's
Yeah.
some serious stuff as well. So, you know, if you want to, maybe you need to reskill. So maybe, I don't know, you've been doing a particular job all your working life and you've been made redundant, but you don't know how to use a computer. Well,
Yeah.
you could do computer skills. There's employment, getting
Yeah.
you back into employment.
Yeah. Or you want to start a new business, you want to make jewelry, or you want to make
Yeah,
candles, or whatever it is, or scarves. You could go and learn here and start something.
whatever. But there's also dance and exercise classes there. So they've got a whole dance studio there. You can do history and languages, lip reading, even. You can learn how to lip read there. And there's even a gaming element to it as well. So getting into strategy games and all that sort of stuff. I couldn't believe it. And that's the catalogue there if you're watching the video version.
And that won't be the only place in Surrey that does it, because I know we do it in other places. So I presume you can have researched this after the podcast, Paul, perhaps, and put it in the chat again. I
Well,
presume there's
I'll
a
put a
page
link
for
in.
adult social learning that shall tell us all the centres, like this one.
Yeah, and all you do to find that out is go to surreycc.gov.uk/adult learning. I'll
Okay.
overlay that in. And there's a QR code on there. I'll put that on the screen there. I can't do it because I've got my
Yeah.
background blurred, but I'll put the QR code on there and you can just scan it. And yeah, I was blown away by this place, and I was in particular blown away by Vanessa, who's the lead sort of officer there, who sort of, you know, runs the whole thing, and her enthusiasm was infectious.
Yeah.
And I think that it stands to reason, if I don't know about this place, a lot of other people don't. So I'm going to make it a mission of mine to sort of spread the word about
And it's
Surrey
probably a way
adult learning.
it's probably a way to make friends as well. So I went to mine with a slightly judgmental, oh, it's going to be a council kind of course. It will be full of a
Yeah.
certain type of person things. It wasn't. Actually, everyone was really talented. I was like, my good God, where have these people come from? But it was a way to meet like-minded people and sort of get out of that bubble that you might be in otherwise. So I would recommend everyone, even if you can only go to 1 or 2 sessions, give it a go, see who you meet.
Yeah, absolutely. So really enjoyed this pod this week,
Yep.
Marissa.
Yeah.
So we
Are we
like you
happy? We're
said,
finishing happy, aren't we? So
we're
we're happy.
finishing happy, definitely. And like you say, we are going to have some guests. We're just in the process of getting them organised and booked in and all the rest of it. We're going to be talking about quite a wide range of subjects. So, but really enjoying the podcast. It's going from strength to strength, getting some really great feedback about it. So yeah, look forward to next week's.
Yep. See you then.
Bye.